Less screaming and more talking. Discipline in 2024 for Black American caregivers. I'm Zinga Hart, and I'm a program assistant with Connecting for Kids. So I want to go ahead and introduce Anna Jones. She is a licensed independent social worker with supervision designation from Cleveland State University. And she also is the founder Up the Steps, a restorative psychotherapy practice specifically designed for women and girls who struggle with emotional and behavior issues.
Okay. Well, hi everyone. It's so nice to meet you. Um, my name is Anna Jones, as you've heard. And one of the things that I love to do in my life is to teach families how to communicate and how to show loving kindness towards each other and compassion. Discipline should be loving and compassionate. It's a process that fosters kindness to others and kindness to themselves. Okay. Um, so what is discipline? Like, what is discipline? So the word discipline comes from the Latin word, which means to teach. Okay. Discipline is a teaching tool to build skills for adulthood. It teaches through modeling, feedback, and coaching. It assumes positive intent and sees a child's inherent goodness. It may include natural or related relevant consequences. Um, and number six, it results in the child learning new skills to meet developmentally appropriate expectations. So what is punishment? We hear about discipline, we hear about punishment. And sometimes you'll hear them together. And sometimes that's confusing. So what is punishment? Punishment is the Latin word, and it's a Greek word that means penalty, okay, or payment, okay, and it means to correct. It has a short-term effect on behavior. It causes fear. It teaches through threats and pain. It focuses on wrongdoing and assumes that the kid did it on purpose or with some negative intent. Um, it may include unrelated negative consequences, and the outcomes could actually result in a child being avoidant and or ashamed. So the thing about discipline and punishment that we see that is different is that with discipline, it is a teaching thing. It is about teaching the child and having teachable moments. Punishment, on the other hand, is very quick, and it doesn't, in most cases, it doesn't last. The child may be corrected in that moment. The child may remember that correction for a couple of days, but eventually a child may forget that correction or ignore the correction if it happens a lot. It becomes such a thing that it doesn't faze them any. So what we want to do is teach our kids through discipline. So let me give you some examples of punishment. So some examples of punishment. I think it's the next slide. Yeah. Examples of punishment are scolding, yelling. Why did you do it? Don't give me excuses. Didn't I tell you? You don't listen. Hand slapping, grabbing, snatching up the child, spanking, you know. So I'll give an example for me. One of the things that I remember I used to do is I would come home from work. I've been working all day. I'm tired. The kids get off of school at say 2:30. So they're home by 3. I don't get home till 5. So I don't understand why I come home and there's still dishes in the sink. And there's no vacuuming being done. And there's no homework being done. In fact, most likely they would be sleeping. And I would become very angry about that. And I would start yelling. Why can't you do these dishes? What is the problem? No one cares about me. And I go to work every day and I bust my butt for you. And you don't. That was not a teachable moment for my kids. It didn't teach them anything. What it taught them is that I'm going to do the dishes, maybe, if because I'm afraid that mom is going to come home and start yelling and I don't want to hear it. So the behavior may have changed, but it only changed because of fear, not because of respect, not because they felt like they were part of this household and they should take care of the things. Not because of that. It was strictly because they didn't want to hear my mouth and or they were afraid. Okay. Something that I want to say too about our punishments, and we can go to the next slide, is that um, sometimes we don't realize the things that we say because we're so frustrated. Okay. Because 9 cases out of 10, whatever you've said it 15 million times and they still didn't do it. And so by that time, you're a raging lunatic. And so you just lose it and we start yelling and screaming. But another thing that I think is important in the Black community that we have to remember is this. There was a time in history, and even today, when our parents and our grandparents believed that if they did not discipline us and discipline us severely, that we would go out here and some police officer would get a hold of us. Back during Jim Crow, the white man would get a hold of you. And there was a fear because if you didn't take care and discipline your child and raise them up in such a way that they needed to be afraid, then you may lose your child. And so we adapted to that trauma the best way that we could in those moments. And today, I can say statistically, we are seeing that less and less African Americans are using corporal punishment or physical discipline. And that is an excellent thing to hear. We are moving in the direction of what I call intentional parenting. Okay. Now, there are some people talk about gentle parenting, and I like gentle parenting, but I'm more of a we still need some consequences. Okay. Consequences are still important, and we'll talk about that later. But according to the National Institute of Health, to be effective with discipline, because that's what we're going to do, we're moving away from punishment. Okay, because we know that punishment, it doesn't work. In fact, it causes damage, emotional damage, physical damage, fear, depression, anxiety. I could just go down the list. So we are moving into discipline. This is where we want to be. So to be effective, according to the National Institute of Health, the discipline needs to be given by an adult with an effective bond with the child. Okay, so the adult has to have some type of relationship with the child. So I know how many of you have ever heard people say, well, we need to put discipline back in the school, physical discipline or any kind of discipline back in the school. I know I've heard it. Okay. And that is problematic because these adults may not have an effective bond with the child. Okay. In order to give appropriate discipline. The discipline needs to be consistent. Now, I know as a parent myself, and I'm a grandparent now, you'll hear me talk about that sometimes consistency is hard because if you say you put your child in timeout, but you need to go to the store, well, you're in timeout too. We'll be just all in timeout because we have to stay consistent. It has to be perceived as fair by the child. Now, sometimes I get pushback with this one. Well, I'm the parent. I understand that. But the child must see fairness within the family, developmentally and temperamentally appropriate and self-enhancing. So what we're looking at, or what we're really trying to get to, is trying to teach our kids to be self-disciplined. Okay. Um, Next slide. So, what are some types of discipline? Okay. This was my favorite when talking about these types of discipline. So we have positive discipline. This is based on praise and encouragement. You teach problem solving skills, developing solutions. This is where you have family meetings. We used to have family meetings, and I was the judge. And it's like, heary, this is what we're bringing to court today. Such and such, Corey or Ozzy did this. What do you think should happen because of this? So we're having conversations. It's authoritative, and that's okay. Gentle discipline, it prevents the problem. It's redirection. It's picking the kid up. Your toddler is running towards something, and you want to scream, "Hey, stop! Don't do that." No, you may have to pick the child up and actually redirect them and move them. Consequences are given without instilling shame. Why did you do that? You're so stupid. Why? That was a stupid thing to do. It really wasn't a stupid thing to do if it was age appropriate. Okay. It may have been something that they didn't know. It could have been, and in that moment, it's a teachable moment. Boundary-based discipline, setting limits, making rules clear and upfront. Clear consequences, natural consequences. Natural consequences are one of my favorites. I actually sometimes will laugh I used to laugh at my kids when they got a natural consequence. You're running. I told you to stop running. Now you ran into the wall. Are you okay? Okay. I told you to stop running. Okay. Behavior modification. I'm sure some of you have heard of this with the behavior charts and all these things. We got rewards and praise. We discourage misbehavior. And we use ignoring. I really don't particularly like the ignoring, because that can also lead to the child feeling isolated. So we have to be really careful with ignoring, and I'll come back to that, hopefully, if I remember. Emotional coaching. It's about identifying the child's emotions. And you want to help the child verbalize their emotions. Next slide. So this, like I said, discipline has consequences. This is not, oh, little Johnny, don't do that. We're not gonna, oh, yes, we're gonna talk to our kids. We are. But there are also times when we may have to put some consequences in place. So some examples of consequences: timeout, taking things away, increasing rules, reasoning, and being creative. So timeouts can be looked at like, instead of it being, people look at it as a punishment, it doesn't have to be a punishment. Timeouts are a time to calm your body and calm your mind. Okay, and we'll talk about that later. Taking things away. That teaches kids to manage their impulses, manage their time. It's not so much taking things away, it's about putting, so say your kid is on the phone all the time and they did something, you want to take the phone. You don't have to take the phone. You just cut the time. So now you're teaching them how to manage their time. If they get from 6 to 8 to be on the phone and they did something, you're like, I'm sorry, but you only get 1 hour now. So you're teaching them how to time management. What are you going to do with your 1 hour of phone time? That's all you have. Okay. Increasing rules. You're teaching them boundary setting. Okay. Reasoning with them. Because they must know what to do and what not to do. And I'm not telling you to negotiate with little terrorists. I am telling you to be collaborative with your child. Okay. There is a difference. Be creative with your consequences. One time when my kids were younger, my son is the oldest and my daughter's the middle child, and they would fight all the time. Yeah. So one time I said, "Oh, you guys want to yell and scream at each other and you don't want to get along? You're gonna sit down and you're gonna play Monopoly together. That's what you're gonna do. And in fact, I'm gonna tie one wrist to the other wrist, and you're gonna have to play this game." So I got creative. To this day, they're grown. My son is 32 years old. My daughter's 28. They talk about that and they laugh about it and they say, "Mom, that was great." I was creative. If they were acting up, "Oh, I guess you're gonna go everywhere I go today." "No, you don't get to stay in your room." Kids like to stay in their room. "We're going for a walk. Come on, the whole family. We're all going for a walk together." So consequences don't always have to be negative. They're because these are teachable moments. Quiet the house. Teach meditation. You know. Next slide. So some of the things that we can. All right. One of the things we have to understand is where we are. Okay. My mother-in-law was a drug and alcohol counselor, and one of the things that she used to always say is, you have to check your own inventory first. Where are you emotionally? You know, and so some of the things that we can do is, or remember, is that it's okay for adults to take time out. In fact, I suggest you do. When I realized how I was yelling and screaming at the kids and all of that, um, it changed because my youngest son communicated to me. He said, "Mommy, you're a yelly belly." He was like 5 years old. That hit me because that would mean that what my son sees of me is that every time I come home from work, all he hears is me yelling about the dishes and the house not clean and this and that. And then I remembered, oh my goodness, I'm acting like my father. I'm acting like my father, who was a great man, but he was a yelly belly. I had to put myself in timeout. So I made a, a guideline for my health. When I come home, unless you are bleeding or somebody's not breathing, I get 15 minutes. I come in the house, I take my coat off, I take my shoes off, I put my bag down, I go to my room for 15 minutes. And the kids respected that because that was said at a family meeting. Mommy needs 15 minutes when she comes home. What am I doing in those 15 minutes? I'm decompressing. I'm doing breath work. I'm meditating. I'm scrolling on my phone. I'm listening to music. I'm doing something so that when I walk out of that room, I can say to my kids, "Hey, how was your day? I don't care about them dishes. How was your day? Got anything you want to show me? What happened today? What went on today? How you feeling?" And then I can say, "Hey, guys, somebody go get those dishes done." And every single time, if I did it that way, the family was calm. Second thing, identifying the triggers. Why are you feeling this way? Why are you so upset? For me, I'm gonna use myself as an example, that you come home from work and the dishes aren't done. And I will tell you why I was upset. Because I had fooled myself into believing that the kids did not respect me when it had nothing to do with that. My kids respected me. But because I thought, this is cognitive behavior therapy, because I thought that my kids didn't respect me, it then went to an emotion of, oh, really? To a behavior of yelling. Okay. So some of the things that we can do while we're in our time out is 4 square breathing. Anybody ever heard of 4 square breathing? If you have, just raise your hand. Well, I can't see any of you. But 4 square breathing is a type of breath. You imagine a square and you take a breath in for 4. You hold for 4. You release for 4. And then you rest for 4. And it works beautifully when you can close your eyes and envision the square. You breathe in 4, hold 4, breathe out 4, rest 4. Okay. Yoga poses. Pick 4. These are my 4 I put on here. The tree pose. As I'm doing my tree pose, I don't know, you stand up. Uh-oh, you can't see me. And you put your hands up like this, and you put your feet up, your little leg up like a tree, and you say, I am a willow tree. I bend and flow. I don't break. I'm a willow. Okay. Mountain pose. Stand straight up with your hands to your side, your face held high. I have climbed many mountains and I can do hard things. Okay. Corpse pose. You lay on the floor, still. There's stillness and calmness in me. Okay. The ragdoll. You lean over and you shake it out, shake it out, shake it out, shake it out. And finally, you take a walk. Take a walk. Change what you're thinking. Be aware of what you're thinking because your thoughts are going to lead right to that uncomfortable and unhealthy emotion that's going to move you into a behavior that you won't like. Okay. Okay. So I think the most important thing is to remember that you love your child. You love your child. You love the person that you are caring for. And you know that because you show them this loving kindness and compassion.